Hi guys, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Pushpak Mundre adventure. I'm your host Pushpak, and today we have with us Kevin. Kevin is a rebound coach, and he talks about masculinity, relationship. He helps guys who are going through breakups, who are who don't understand women, and he's trying all of us basically. So welcome to the podcast, Kevin. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to talk about all these very necessary pieces of knowledge and skills and
Awesome.
share them across the world, right? Because I'm in the U.S., you're in India. We're
Yeah,
gonna have
yeah.
some awesome people. So, but I'm doing great. I'm doing amazing, and I'm just excited to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Cool. So, why don't you like introduce about yourself, like in a short, like when you say rebound coach, so why you call yourself a rebound coach?
Yeah, so I call myself the rebound coach because, as you can imagine, someone who focuses on breakups and men going through breakups.
Yeah.
I am a man who has been through breakups, so I know a thing or two about it personally,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very passionate about basically helping men understand how to position themselves right in the world, but also with women in relationships so that they can succeed much more effortlessly and without the emotional confusion. So yeah, I'm working with men 1v1 and in group settings, and sharing with them sort of my road of
Mm-hmm.
experience and
Yeah.
how to negate and stay away from that.
Awesome. So, you must be talking to a lot of men, right? So, what do you think that problem men are facing, like in terms of relationship, in terms of attracting women, or do you think men are getting weaker, about this, whole masculinity? Like a lot of movements are starting all over the world. It's like this pop culture, people are calling masculinity toxic, but So, what do you think about that? About all this
Yeah,
stuff. I
it's a
think I,
can
I
of
asked
worms.
a lot of questions in one sentence. So let's go step by step.
No, I got you. I mean, hey, it's definitely it revolves around masculinity for sure. There is
Hmm.
something going on. Yeah, like you said, I work with it every day. I'm in this industry of relationships, understanding the dynamics of how to be successful in that. And what I see is that we have a very poor understanding of our own energy. So we're
Hmm.
talking about masculine and feminine energy, right? And how we're operating with other people.
Hmm.
And we have a poor understanding, so of understanding ourselves and then what we want from people we're seeking. But yes, to answer your question, like what is like this problem in masculinity? Like I think the core is masculinity, right? We're kind of softer as a society for sure. I mean,
Hmm.
this past year we just faced, an immense challenge in COVID-19, which definitely, was a challenge, and it either brought the best out of people or other people maybe they found their weaknesses, right? Maybe a little bit weaker.
Yeah.
But yes, I do think men as a whole, we're finding that there is a little bit of weakness. There is masculinity is a little bit under duress. There are still plenty of masculine people out there and many masculine men, but I think even those people, those men, they misunderstand what they're looking for with women. So then we have women, right, who are
Hmm.
taking places now in the workplace. I mean, it's a beautiful thing because we want women to be financially secure, and doing amazing things and doing what they want to be doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But now we have sort of this conflict where we have a lot of masculine women, we have a lot of masculine men,
Hmm.
and we have maybe a lot of men who are meeting women who maybe are the superior in
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
masculinity, and so then we have men who are sort of becoming weaker, and they're trying to find a way to polarize these energies. So like, if you meet a woman who truly you're like, wow, she's, maybe she's like a CEO or she's a boss, and you can
Hmm.
kind of tell, she's got this dynamic energy about her. So you're a guy and maybe you're masculine, but in order to, you know, making a relationship work with her, one of you maybe needs to sort of like step into their feminine, right? So you can
Right,
sort of
right, right.
polarize each other. So I
Mm-hmm.
think we're seeing a lot of that. Pushpak, I think
Oh.
we're seeing
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that.
So,
And
you're saying men are getting into like men are becoming feminine, in this kind of examples,
mm-hmm,
right? That's what you're trying to
mm-hmm.
say.
Yes, and my ladies out there, I don't think they're off the hook either. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people who will say, it's just men are weak and that's the end of the story. I think it's much more complex than that.
Right.
Right now, it's just a misunderstanding. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we know what the divorce rate is, at least in the States.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
America, people are getting divorced and relationships just struggle. And with when it comes to women, and both men and women, it's just an understanding, right? We don't understand, what we want from a relationship. We also have societal pressures, where people in general are these younger generations aren't really even seeking out relationships. Hookup culture. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is just super popular, and people aren't really
Mm-hmm.
looking for committed relationships. So then they end up getting burned
Yeah,
because
yeah.
then they meet someone that's amazing, but their whole psyche about it was I'm not getting in a relationship. And they meet someone amazing, and that
Mm-hmm.
person burns them, and then they're all upset. And it's like my whole theme pushback for 2021 is being conscious and intentional. So
Mm-hmm.
with the men I work with in my program, it's all about being conscious and intentional so that we know what we're looking for. I'm not saying we have to be like unbelievably rigid that we can't have fun with people who are outside of that. But having an understanding of what you're looking for in a woman and in a relationship, and being really conscious about not spending time with people who are outside of what you're looking for, because
Mm-hmm.
that's how we get burned. So there's a lot we could break it down in this episode,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's a lot to uncover.
Awesome. So, you talked about the divorce. So, as a India, we are a traditional society. Not anymore, but our parents and our grandparents, so they never had divorce. Like, there are very few people. Only 1% of the people. My friends. Actually, there's none of my friends whose parents got divorced. Can you imagine that? Like, this is the situation in India. I think there might be few of your friends whose parents are divorced in USA, right?
It's that's a great question. I think there is still the traditional, so those generations are still pretty traditional, like
Mm-hmm.
my parents, that generation.
Yeah.
Still a lot of tradition in America.
Mm-hmm.
um, but that's only in my part of the world. The US is enormous. India is really big too. And like
Exactly.
there's definitely parts of this country where I can go west to the western part of this country, maybe meet more people who have been married multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
Yeah.
So
Billy G, Uncle Billy G, and Jeff, both of them got divorced recently.
yeah, it's and here's the thing too. I don't know anyone who wants to get a divorce, or thinks that a divorce is like a part of life, right? Because a divorce is really serious, like costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
um, but the point I want to make about that is that I don't it's not a problem that people want to leave relationships, right? Like a lot of the times, I can be convinced that maybe one person isn't going to be your person for life. I can't tell you for sure. I don't have that information.
Mm-hmm.
What we do know is we've seen it's very hard to make work. Um, but I think just this marriage conversation is a very difficult one, right? You have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
be
yeah.
very, very certain.
you know uh, I
Mhm.
think we should first focus on the relationship stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, so actually, you said men are becoming less masculine and female women are becoming more masculine.
Hmm.
So how do we what kind of, can you give us real life example, what kind of problems are people, what's the real problem? I've heard there's a problem of some people have the fear of abandonment, some fear, like some people, they are people pleasing, like they want to please their partner, and then there are people who are very needy, some guys who are needy, they want to constantly talk. So how do these people, how
Yeah.
do they this
Right.
Yeah, what about
Yeah,
that?
I think it means we have to break down masculinity, right? Like what is masculinity? Like what is not masculine, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're really dealing with. Because yeah, I mean you're right. Masculinity can be like a blanket term that a lot of people might not understand, right? But what masculinity is underneath that word is discipline, confidence, purpose, intention, leading, decision making,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like being
Mm-hmm.
sure of yourself. That's masculinity, right? And so what we mean by what this problem is we're seeing with men is, like you said, we're seeing a lot of needy men who don't really know what they want out of life, right? They're kind of like they lack some sort of purpose, some
Mm-hmm.
sort of like intention or something to focus on, right? And we find a lot of men kind of becoming obsessed with finding love or finding a relationship, which is really what the feminine is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
here's the thing, like, it's not a bad thing to be feminine. All
Mm-hmm.
men, all of us should have a good balance of masculine and feminine energy within us from moment to moment, right? But what the problem is, I think there's a lot of men who are struggling with women because, well, a lot of, generally speaking, right? Like most guys want to be the masculine, like leader, like this James Bond type, this badass.
Mm-hmm.
Most guys, if you were to ask them, like, they'd be like, yeah, I want to be smooth, right? Like I want to be able to go up to a girl, talk to her, and just like have success that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if they're acting out of a feminine way, right, then they're going to be confused. Like, why are things not working? It's because
Right.
generally what's happening is, this happened to me. I was prioritizing love. Like I wasn't saying that out loud, but that's just how I felt. Like my whole thing was like just to meet a girl, right? And like have love. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when that's your purpose and your priority, you're not really masculine anymore. You're actually a feminine person, because what the feminine is, the feminine wants love, So like as a woman, most women, you can kind of tell, maybe you have friends or girlfriends that like you can kind of just tell their whole life is about love. It's like centered
Mm-hmm.
around love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of tell when they get into a relationship, you can see a woman who's just like, she's just so fulfilled. She's so happy because she
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
love.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas men, a masculine person rather, would be very focused on purpose, very
Mm-hmm.
focused on their career. And you, of course, you want to balance all of this, right? But these are
Mm-hmm.
just the polarizing energies, right? The yin and the yang. So what we're seeing is, yeah, we just have a lot of guys who lack purpose, or rather, they lack the understanding that if they want to succeed long term with women, then they need to prioritize some sort of goal, some sort of purpose,
Yeah.
because
So
that's the masculine.
yeah. So you said like these guys who are who like you also had in your mind, once you start to like once you're thinking of getting into a relationship, then you're thinking it as a love, right? So that is the wrong thing which guys are doing. So what should they do? Like what should have in their mind before getting into
Mm.
relationship? Like.
Great question. Great question. I definitely love to answer that. So the first thing you want to do is, basically, you've had this inner discussion with yourself. You're basically like, something's not working, right? I've been
Mhm.
hurt. I want to be this badass leader, right? So you basically affirmed that. You've affirmed that I want to be primarily masculine, right? We're going to be balanced out. We're going to have amazing feminine qualities as well, but we're going to
Mhm.
be primarily in our masculine nature. So then the very next thing you have to do, well, after you've committed to that, right? You've said, yes, I'm committed. Because some people just say that they'll do that, right?
Mhm.
And then they don't commit to it. So the second thing is, you commit to finding that purpose, right? Now, I think there's a lot of people who talk a little bit too much about purpose and make it this sort of like intimidating, like, how am I going to find it sort of thing, right?
Mhm.
Really, what we're talking about here is, we just want you to be driven, right? Like driven towards being successful. Like maybe you don't know specifically what you want to be good at or what you want to do, but just say to yourself, like, you know what, like I just want to like be good at this thing, right? And I'm going to commit all of my energy to it. And it's not saying you're going to block out dating, you're going to be off the market. It's just
Mhm.
saying, like, that's my goal. Like that's what I want to do. I want to create success for myself and for my family, right? And my network. And so what you're basically doing is, now all of that attention that you used to spend thinking about women, right? Thinking about
Mm-hmm.
that girl you went on that amazing date with, right? You had a good
Mm-hmm.
time with her, you got drinks, or you
Yeah.
went on a hike with her, whatever you did. You'll slowly over time, what will happen is you'll realize like all that mental energy that you used to spend, like honestly in pain, just
Mm-hmm.
thinking about women and thinking about
Yeah.
her, the
Yeah.
girl, whoever this girl is, whoever's watching this, listening to this, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, because we've all been there, where we've all like
Yeah.
had this girl that we had an amazing time with, and now she's just living in our head,
Mm-hmm.
preoccupied. And this is like part of this is amazing. I'm not saying you'll get her out of your head. I don't necessarily want that for you. I want you to have love and totally be in love with a woman, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the idea is it won't be like painful and it won't be like confusing. You'll be able to be like understanding that, okay, like, I had this amazing experience. I love this woman
Mm-hmm.
already, whatever, you're dating her, whatever, or you're in a relationship, but that your goal is whatever you're doing during the day, right?
So how
Um,
does it could help us in our dating, basically?
Say it again.
How does it could help a man in his dating and in his dating life and in a normal life, basically, like focusing on
Yeah,
goal, focusing on my purpose, and focusing on mission. And one more thing, like let me add, as you actually you also mentioned, like when we talk about finding a purpose, like everyone talks about it, like
I know.
find your purpose, find your mission. You should have a mission.
Mm-hmm,
As a man, you should have a mission. Even I talked about it. I like, I'm
mm-hmm,
creating content on Instagram, I talk about it. But what should be your mission? How to find your mission, like
mm-hmm.
that. Yeah, so these are the two questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with that one first, and then remind me of the next one after.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, finding your purpose, right? It is kind of it's a big topic, and I think I've definitely spent years just like focusing on that area. I was reading
Mm-hmm.
books about it. I was really, so that's the main thing, right? And just try, because some people don't even pay attention. They just
Yeah.
kind of like they've subscribed to maybe working like this job that doesn't fulfill them in any way, but
Mm-hmm.
they've subscribed to the idea that this is what I have to do. So first of all, like you just have to believe that there's going to be something out there for you that is a little bit of it's a calling, right? It's something that's been calling. Some of us, you might be listening to this podcast and you're like, you've had a little voice in the back of your head that's wanted you to try something and you just haven't pulled the trigger, right? You haven't tried it yet. I don't know about you, but it probably took some time to like start this podcast, start the page, and start talking about it. It takes
Yeah.
bravery. It
Yeah.
takes
Yeah.
it takes courage, you know. But now you're finding yourself like you're immersed in it. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is for guys that like don't feel immersed in something. Like this is what you're going for, right? Obviously, I'm not saying I want you to get lost in it because now eventually you come to spirituality. At least I hope. And your journey as a man, that's what I'm about, right? Is you find purpose, you make it your life, and then eventually you involve yourself in spirituality and understanding that regardless of whatever happens, like I love this moment, being in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
But back to the purpose conversation, make it an emphasis. Make it an emphasis. Search for it. I can't tell you since I'm not talking to you 1v1, like how I'm going to find your purpose. But if you just pay attention to it, I promise you, you will, something will click. It may not
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
today. It may not be tomorrow. It might not be next year. I mean, for
Mm-hmm.
me, like, and for some people, maybe they don't really have a genuine calling until later in their life. I don't know. I do think though that if you're in your 20s, you've probably had enough life experience where there's something that is drawing you, something that's calling you. Because at the end of the day, like eventually it'll just be trying things,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
try things and see what works, see what sticks.
Exactly, because you know what, like I've been trying things from last 3 to 4 years, and I still don't know what I really want. I don't know that, like that, like this is my calling and all. But I'm just trying, man. Like last year I started podcast in the pandemic. Then I started creating content. In when I was in college, I started a company. I started my startup, and then I started working with another startup. So I tried doing multiple things and I'm still doing so I think maybe like I'm having fun doing this podcast, right? So I think maybe
Hmm.
like I don't know if it like how long can I do it, or I don't really know the outcome out of it, to be honest. So but I'm having fun, I'm learning new things. So I guess that's how I think we need to, like, keep trying. Most of the people, what people do is they just stick to one job and then keep doing it and then don't even explore. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the thing we should really do.
100%. And part of that is you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because like you're gonna come to a point where, like you just said, your job is gonna be like kind of boring to you. There's just gonna be challenges, like no matter what. Like there's a quote out there. I believe Grant Cardone is who said this, but he says that you don't have to love what you do to like what you do. So
Exactly.
it's kind of like counterintuitive, right? It's like, oh, so maybe I can just like you basically it's just saying like, hey, whatever you end up doing, for your money making, or maybe you have a side passion or a side project, however you organize this purpose, there's going to be challenges and there's going to be things you don't want to do. So that's why I always look back to that quote whenever I'm like, I'm doing something in my business
Yeah,
today or
yeah, yeah.
tomorrow that I'm like, this kind of sucks. I'm like, well, like this is like part of this is just like people, you have to make sacrifices. You have to do some things that you don't like. And then,
Exactly, that's the thing,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
And then at the
So
end of the day, like surround yourself with support so
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
like you can ask questions to mentors, to coaches, to people who can like be, because when we're on our own journey, it's very difficult to always understand,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
what
yeah.
we should be doing or if we're doing things right. So support should 100% be welcomed.
Like, we started talking about in the like the entire of a generation, like do what you love, follow your passion. So
Hmm.
that's true, but like when it comes to work now, even if it comes to doing a podcast, if you like talking to someone, yeah, this part is good, right? But you know what, after that I need to edit this video, I need to upload it, and then I need to publish it. So that kind of part really sucks, okay? Like, this is I personally feel, but still I have to do it because yeah, that's a part of, man, that's how you work is not fun. Like, we need to accept this, right? Work couldn't be fun. Like, you have to do this, and yeah, that's it, man.
Yeah,
And
you
yeah,
make a great point. You make a great point.
yeah.
It is tough. It's something I ask myself every week. Like you have to have good conversations with yourself, right, to
Mhm.
understand what is necessary to contributing to your dream. Like right, like that's when you go back to your goals. It's like
Right, right.
so you have to be rational about it. It's like okay, like here's parts of what I'm doing that I really enjoy. Maybe compare it to the shit that you didn't like,
Mhm.
right? And then you have time also to just explore. So when it comes to purpose, like I think we've hit it on the nail here, on why it's important and what how to go about it. Um, to maybe summarize and cap up this portion of the conversation, like
Mhm.
purpose, like whether you have it or don't have it, just be focused on that success, right? Because ultimately, women are attracted to busy, successful men.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So that
that's
that was my second question, I guess. Like, why we should focus on purpose
mhm.
instead of women, and how it could help us with dating and in our life. That was a question, right?
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's a great. I mean, it's a great segue. It's like why purpose, right? Like why do we need to be committed to something? Because well, we know it's masculine, so we know that it'll be polarized into the feminine. But why does that matter, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so really, what it is too, and why it helps, like on the short term, is that you'll be so preoccupied with growing your purpose, your passion, your business, whatever it is, that you'll spend much less time being needy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being insecure and chasing women away. Cause that's one that I use that term a lot, that phrase. I try not to because I think it can be misleading. But if you've ever felt like you've chased a woman away before, like you kind of like pushed her out the door,
Mm-hmm.
like that's the feeling of like being insecure, being needy, being a little more in our feminine.
Yeah.
Whereas when we have purpose, we can date and we're not really, we have so much love not only for what we're doing in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
well, we have so much love for what we're doing in our lives that we won't sort of like become needy due to that. We'll be so fulfilled with what we have going on in our own lives that we won't place a woman on a pedestal anymore. I mean, sure, you could still make that mistake, but it'll be much easier for you when you have something going on in your life that's really important. um, and you care about it, so that you won't really put yourself in a position to get hurt, because you're so focused on what you have going on.
Right,
So
right,
so
right.
say you're in the dating scene, and like, I have a different perspective on all that when it comes to dating. Like, none of my clients or anyone in the program, like, I don't tell them we need to be going on dates. I used to
Mm-hmm.
have that perspective, but in the Superior Man course, it's all about being conscious and intentional.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to position ourselves in a way where we attract women into our lives that already align with us and our values and are going to support us, instead of just going on these like nonsense dates, that they're hookups, right? It's part of
Mm-hmm.
like hookup culture,
Yeah.
but in the end of the day, it's not fulfilling like meeting an actual woman that could, contribute to your life on a really
Right.
positive way.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So that's really like when it comes down to why purpose.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's
No, it,
like
it makes sense. Yeah, it totally makes sense
yeah.
because if you don't have a purpose in life, like if you don't have a mission and you're constantly texting your girlfriend or your wife, or like you're constantly
Mhm.
talking to her. So yeah, but there are these people also, like who are into a emotionally dependent relationship, like they're emotionally dependent on their partner, and they constantly seek approval from their partner, right? Like approval for anything. I don't know, like this is not only happens with men, this happens with women as well, right? They seek approval and they are like codependent. So
Mhm.
like in Indian movies, in Indian Bollywood movies, like they've been showing us that like only two people can matlab, how do I explain this, man? Means you're not together, like like when a man and woman comes, then you are the complete, like suppose someone is my
Okay.
girlfriend, then if I'm with her, then only I'm a complete man, otherwise I'm not, that kind of culture which Indian society has influenced basically. So that's why people are codependent on each other and emotionally dependent basically on each other. So what do you think about that?
I see that right here in the States too. Hollywood,
Mm, yeah,
media,
yeah.
movies. It's yeah, I totally agree with your sentiment about it. And it's understanding that like you need to have full self-love and self-confidence in yourself really before you can achieve this like 10 out of 10 ideal relationship, because like if you're subscribing to the idea that, like you said, that I'm going to meet someone and they're going to complete me, um, that's just not a good way to look at it, right?
Yeah,
It's
that's
it's
really fucked
completely,
up.
yeah, it is, and it's really dependent on that person. And in reality, if you're ever in a place where you need anyone, um, it's not a good place to be because then we're constantly at mercy of that person and whether they're
Yeah.
showing up or not.
Hmm.
Whereas if we can fully understand ourselves and be at peace, like total peace with ourselves and our journey. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying this is easy, but I promise you it's a road worth taking, is and it may be difficult to be alone, right? To discover yourself and
Yeah,
to
yeah.
emotionally mature. But for your future relationships, it's going to do amazing wonders, because there's just a very small percentage of relationships out there in the world that um, we can imagine are 10 out of 10 and feel truly amazing to be in and be a part of. It's not. So we have to basically take the high road, which is a big thing I preach in my programs and with my clients, is
Hmm.
that we have to take kind of this more difficult road, this difficult journey, which is probably being alone a little more, right? And discovering ourselves, because
Yeah, yeah.
ultimately another person is not going to complete you. They can make you better. A woman could really improve your life. She could really help you.
Hmm.
But you shouldn't need her, and she shouldn't need you either. I mean, it should just be you guys complement each other is a much better phrase to use, is that someone can complement you in your traits and your abilities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, when you talk about going alone, like, so you also mentioned earlier, like, when we see a masculine man, so like in Hollywood or in Bollywood as well, like when we look at the John Wayne or James Bond, so these guys are like lone wolf. But don't you think that's, that's not necessary? Like in terms of women, like women are always talking. They're always talking, like whatever they feel, they like open up, no matter how fucked up they are
Mm,
feeling. So, but they can open up. But as a man, like you can't, just tell your insecurities to people, like especially to another man. So I think it's really important if we have a group of people, if you have a group of, even a small group of men, which you can share everything, because everyone has have needs, man. Like no matter how masculine you are, no matter how alpha you call yourself, but
mm-hmm.
I think that mentality of James Bond becoming, staying alone, I think that's I, I, I think
100%.
that is not sustainable at all. I think we should have a
100%.
brotherhood kind of stuff. Yeah, right.
100%. I'm glad you brought that up, because the only reason I use James Bond from time to time is just to reference his charm, right? His
Yeah, yeah.
ability to attract women, but not his masculinity. His masculinity is a little rigid. It's a little closed off. It's a little bit old school
Mm-hmm.
masculinity, right? Um, what I want for my clients and for people to take away from this podcast is that, masculinity, when it's healthy and when it's strong, you should definitely feel like a warrior, like a savage, but at the same time also like vulnerable, able to like speak to people and tell people, how you feel. But it's not like when masculinity is just, it's kind of gross when people sort of like maybe make fun of people for like their softer side, right? We see that sometimes, and like it's a really bad thing, because what we're doing is we're basically telling people who want to be masculine, like we have to suppress our emotions. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
obviously that's not what that does. It's going to make you a very hardened individual who has a difficult time relating to the feminine and having relationships with women, successful ones, at least like 10 out of 10 ones. Um, because you're going to be so hardened with your emotions. You never release, you always keep them in. I like to look at masculinity as you're like a warrior, you're a savage. Like you can lead a fucking pack, but you also would be able to connect with someone who's really down and support them,
Mm-hmm.
and be in that sort of like loving state. So one thing I actually said recently that kind of sums this up is that you lead with your heart, but make decisions with your logic. Like that's
Right.
kind of a great way to sum up, like, I think modern masculinity should be. So it's like you're leading with your heart, so you genuinely are loving, and you are love, but you're also not an idiot. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have you have emotional discipline, and you're able to say yes or no to the truth, right? Like your ability to see truth is still intact.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Awesome. So, do you think like the feminine women are not becoming less these days? Like it's hard to find a feminine woman who wants to, like have kids, take care of family, and do this traditional stuff. Or this kind of women are also out there.
Well, we definitely know that there are women out there that want that, right? You're probably going to have to look for more traditional women, right? For more traditional women. Now, I think it's just like we have modern men now. We're going to have modern women where, like, we all need to adapt. Like, if you're
Right, right.
women, like, if you're a woman, like, it would be important to understand, like, what you want, like, and then obviously as a man, identify that. Because a lot of women, there's some people who say this, and I do think it's true, is that a lot of times women will say things that they don't actually mean, right? And it's not like coming out the right way. And sometimes we have to look at that a lot with the way. So it's different between the way they act, right? They behave. So like on
Yeah.
social media, you see a lot of women who like, they kind of really preach right now, and it's from the media. It's from the top down. It's not like all of women's fault. It's not all of men's fault. You play this gender blaming game and you go nowhere. Really, what
Yeah.
it is we see the media promoting women working, really intense jobs over, living a domestic life. And at the end of the day, I want everyone to be happy. You just have to understand what you're looking for, and be very mindful about someone's actions versus their words when you're trying to identify a woman that's going to support you. So to answer your question, there's 100% there are feminine women out there. I do think we're more in a time period where like domestic behavior, domestic lifestyles are getting kind of like shit on for
Hmm.
lack of a better term. Like it's people are looking at that like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, we have, feminism as the ideology and the culture is very strong right now, especially in the States,
Yeah.
pushing women into the workforce.
Yeah,
And
that's gonna fuck our, fuck up our society. I guess feminism could fuck up our society. I think people
yeah,
will get offended by listening to this, but yeah, I think it's a fact, man. I don't know. Like,
yeah, I think there's definitely like obviously feminism in the beginning, it's a really positive movement because because if we want to go back and talk about history of this, like women for so long, were struggling to be independent.
hmm,
And it wasn't their fault. I mean, it was just how society was. So for
hmm,
lack of a better understanding, society was just, we support our men, we work in the kitchen, and that's what it was. And a lot of women suffered, because they had no other option. If a
yeah,
man was treating them horribly, where are they going to go? They don't have any
yeah,
job skills. They don't have anything. So what's happening right now is we're just having the adverse reaction to that, and that happens. Like you look at politics, like you get one really polarizing president and then the pendulum swings to the next. It's like it's just the people, we want the polar opposite. So right now we're just recovering from that time period where women are looking back at the 70s and the 20s and all this time and they're like, what the fuck, like I can't believe women were like bowing to men's feet. So now there's this just really harsh reaction that you see on social media and you see
yeah.
from women who are just like, I don't need no man, all that sort of drama. And at the end of the day, I think it'll even out. It will even out because it has to, right?
I think that's really toxic, man.
Really toxic.
Like they're angry at men for no reason, like just because of the social
Yeah.
media post or like something happened in history.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
come on, dude. Like,
it's
seriously.
people who are easily manipulated, and this goes back to there's a
Yeah,
quote.
totally.
It's just about like the weak-minded versus the strong-minded. Like how governments and media always goes after the weak-minded people, and typically those people are easily susceptible to being sort of manipulated into like hating something that they have no experience with. And that's a lot of what
Exactly.
feminism is. Women hate domesticity and they've never ever been domestic in their entire lives. So it's like, how do you know you
Exactly.
hate childbearing or hate anything like that when you've never done it? Hey, but I'm coming as a man who has no experience in this. I'm just saying from what my experience is interacting with women who are like that. I've been on dates with women who are really really into feminism, and they've definitely told me they don't want a man sometimes, and it's like they don't know what they want at some point. And at the end of the day, it's really a corruption coming from I can't say I
Yeah.
know for sure, but it's definitely coming from the media. It's definitely coming from government. you know and as we know.
I feel really bad for this woman, man. Like from bottom of my heart, I feel really bad for these women who are like totally brainwashed by feminism.
Yeah, I mean, well,
Seriously.
some people theorize that it's very similar to how black people have been treated in the history, right? It's like
Hmm.
just similar to women. Women are looking at their experience in this world and they're like, wow, like my parents, my grandparents, like they lived horrible domestic lives, right? And their lives were shit. So
Yeah.
they want to change things. And similar to
Yeah.
racism, it's like
Yeah. Like
it's
maybe they want to take revenge. I don't know, from men, or like they are resentful. I like there could be a lot of things, but it will never give them peace of mind. Like they should understand this.
Yeah, and there's nothing we can do about it. Pushback. Like we could talk about feminism all day long, and we're just gonna make people
Yeah.
mad.
Actually.
It's important to talk about for men and to understand that these types of women are out there. But there's still, I like to believe there's still tons of amazing women out there, whether they're
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
be your
Yeah.
girlfriend or just a friend. There's plenty of women that are really into feminism that can be an amazing friend for you. Um, I don't know how that always works, but what I'm saying is there are amazing women out there. Because I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
a lot of people look at this society and it's so bleak in terms of dating prospects. But you have to remain positive, just like we do in everything. You have to remain positive.
Great.
You might need to put yourself in different areas of your country, your state, your environments, so you can meet more women who are more aligned with what you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think that's really all you can do.
Yeah. So, do you think like men should date feminine women or like the feminist women, or what? I want to ask you, like, who would you date, a feminist or a feminine woman?
Well, I mean, if you look at who I am, I'm probably not going to do well in a long-term relationship with like a woman that's very into modern feminism. You
Mhm.
know, obviously I support women. I love women. That's why I love that women. That's why I talk about women all day.
Yeah,
Like that's how much I love them. But there's men. Yeah, there's a lot of women that subscribe to modern feminism that would be very hard to date because they believe that men are bad, and it's just kind of in their blood, right? It's kind of
yeah,
just like
yeah, yeah.
ingrained in them at this point. They may
Mhm.
not admit that to you face to face,
Of course.
but their actions would show otherwise. And so, yeah, obviously, like the goal is not to date anyone who, I wouldn't say like from feminism or any ideology. Just you're looking for a feminine woman. You definitely have to like be very aware, and that's why I say conscious and intentional. So my theme for 2021 is conscious and intentional. You have to kind of break down these people, where they're coming from. Do they hate their parents? Do they hate America? Do
Yeah,
they hate the
yeah.
country they live in? Like, because right now, I mean, there's a lot of that going on, and
Right, right.
I'm what you. So yeah, I guess politics. You have to look at your values and where you are
Yeah,
politically,
totally.
and be with someone who is more aligned with you. Like one of my biggest values is accountability. And accountability is like that shows a lot about someone, and you can find out really quickly who's accountable and who's not.
How do
And
you
you
do
might,
that?
well, I mean, if you're ever with them or you look at their politics, a lot of the times can show whether they're an accountable person or not, or they're sort of like a victim blamer type of person.
Right,
And
right.
that, I mean, that's, you see a lot of that today.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
really I don't like to hang out with people who like to make excuses. Like, I like to just be positive and believe that I can sort of, in a way, control my destiny. Also surrender from a spiritual perspective, but I can make actions that make my life better. Um, and that's how I choose to live. So I really want to be with someone who believes that same thing. And, so conscious and intentional, the only way you can get there and live that is by truly feeling like you can attract anyone. Like, a superior man, he can get any woman he wants, but he chooses to
Yeah.
only get the women that he wants. And that's a pretty big step to get to. I realize that not every man is at that stage. You might be at the stage where you're just trying to like hook up with a bunch of girls because
Mm-hmm.
you haven't ever done that before. And that's great. Go explore your sexuality, hang out, have fun, and hook up with a bunch of girls. Eventually, when you're ready, you'll see you've dated enough women to know, like, okay, I don't like those types of women. I don't like that type of women. Like, I really like women who are tall, who are sweet and nice. Hopefully, that's one that you got to remember right there. Is
Yeah.
every guy listening to this, you want to date someone who's nice. I know it sounds like, well, that should be easy, right? If they love me, they're going to be nice to me. It's like, not always. You got to make sure you're really looking out for the characteristics of people, and don't get into something for lust. If you're serious about meeting someone who's going to help your life improve and compliment you, like we talked about earlier, then consider taking lust and sex out of the occasion. That might help you. That might help you focus more on who she actually is as a person, and not who she is as a more sexual being, right? And from these like spiritual perspectives. So that's a good takeaway for guys listening, is like, understand where you're at on your journey. Like, if you're still exploring, you have no idea what type of woman you want to be with, then you might need to just get out there and keep exploring. But if you do, then maybe it's time to stop having sex with so many women. Like you just get to a point where, like, I know I can if I want to, but like it's not getting me the results I want. I'm not meeting high
Yeah,
quality
yeah.
women who are improving my life. I'm just
Mhm.
churning and burning all these chicks, and it's like, what am I doing? Because I used to do that stuff. I mean, I used to really be into like, approach and having lots of options with women, dating a bunch of women, all that stuff. But now I'm like, let's attract the right woman, right? And
Mhm.
It's all, you probably noticed, it's all about taking the high road.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's taking the difficult journey.
So you're talking a lot about conscious intentions, right? If I'm not
Hmm.
wrong. Yeah. So what's it about?
So conscious is from a standpoint of like being mindful, right? Like, so I'm glad you asked that because maybe I need to clarify that more on my content. But conscious is, yeah, I mean, it's being mindful, right? It's like, it's, so obviously, if you've never, maybe you're someone who's like had kind of a chaotic life so far.
Hmm.
Like, you don't understand things very well. You don't really understand yourself very well. So maybe you can't even be, you're not even capable of being conscious yet. You need to like awaken that side of you. So I'd recommend getting into spirituality. Maybe just start with an easy meditation, right? And you might be wondering, like, what the hell does this have to do with attracting women? But you'd be very shocked. What I do in my Superior Man course is I introduce spirituality to a lot of the guys. And what happens is you become so like aware of how you're being perceived and what's happening around you, right? Because you get out of your head, you get out of your thoughts, you clean that out. So now it's just empty. So now that when you're with women and you go out, like you can totally, you're just in tune. You know, you're in tune with the feminine. You're in tune with how she's looking at you. Is she smiling? Is she cold? Does she need a jacket? Like you're just able to read her and body language better. It's just when you're conscious, you'll be able to notice the good things, but you also be able to notice the bad things. So it's
Hmm.
like on a first date, you should be able to know within minutes almost like whether someone is like really your partner, you know? I know that sounds like, holy shit, really? Like, I mean, when you get to the point where you're conscious and truly awake, like it won't be that hard. But this is after you've had a little bit of experience, I'm sure. But,
Yeah.
and then intentional is just like, don't do anything that isn't in line with where you want to go. You know, like so like some people say, you know, and this is kind of the second stage man. I'll just use second stage and we'll say third stage is the superior man who only chooses to do what he wants to do, right? But a second stage man might say like, I'm going to hook up with this girl. I know I'm not going to like, she's not really a girl I would like get in a relationship with, but I'm going to hook up with her. And it's like, you know, that's not very intentional, right? That's not very conscious. That's basically telling me like, you don't really care. You know?
Hmm.
And some of you might be like, well, what does it matter? Like, I already know I'm not going to be with her. Why don't I just hook up with her? Hey, it's up to you. Go for it if you want. But what can happen is if you spend time with people who you don't really align with, eventually problems happen. You
Yeah.
might end up in a relationship with that person, whether you like it or not,
Hmm.
because you've just been with that person. And what happens is when you spend enough time with someone, you begin to love them. If you have a nice heart, you know, you just love people, you know? So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know, if you're a kind, nice guy, like I'm sure a lot of you are, like, don't spend time with someone who's not that because you'll end up loving them and that'll be a really tough relationship and a tough journey.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's not that, hey, it's not that you can't explore your sexuality. Realize where you're at in your journey, right? My thing is like, you know, I want everyone to feel abundance, but not necessarily like physical abundance. Because you hear a lot in the dating stages, like you got to have a lot of girls, you got to have a lot of options so that you feel abundance. But like to me, I'm like, I really question that. I'm like, if I'm really a badass dude, like, do I really need lots of women just to feel confident? Like, you know, it's like it's
Yeah.
interesting because they've
Yeah.
been saying
Mm.
that for years. It's like you have to have 3 or 4 different girls because that's when you're going to be your most confident. It's like why
Hmm.
why is women my only confidence source? Like, you
Exactly.
know, like you got to diversify that confidence. So yeah, that's another point about abundance that I think is important to understand.
Totally. That's true. So, like, what do you think? Like, any advice for men? What men should do, and what women should do also at the same time, and like in relationship, in terms of relationship, in terms of dating,
Hmm.
and all.
So looking at my guys, like I just want you to be able to take a look in the mirror, right? Like really take some time to self-reflect. I know that's something a lot of rigid masculine guys wouldn't want to do, right? And maybe that's you, and maybe that's triggering you right now. Like
Hmm.
you need to have that conversation with yourself, like where am I at in my journey? right? Am I someone who hasn't experienced any sort of love and attraction? Then let's get into that, like, right? Then make that be something we work on, right? The purpose is always the first thing, right? Establish that you want to find that purpose, make that a priority, and once you've done that, then look at yourself and be like, where do I need to get better at dating, and like, can I have more romantic experiences and start to build up that sort of profile of my success. But once you've achieved that, it's time, I think, for us guys to mature a little bit and stop spending time with women who don't support you, and aren't with you. And I think, from a society perspective and culture too, we'll be able to kind of reclaim our masculinity in a sense if we can live this more modern masculine, more superior man sort of energy. Because, I see a lot of women dominating right now from a competitive standpoint, right? Like, a lot of my guys are getting wrecked in relationships and getting broken up with and getting hurt. So it's time to just take a look in the mirror and see how we can improve. But I guess the main takeaway is, like, if you don't know your purpose, just spend time in this reflection and just put effort towards finding it. And that'll be like the best thing you can do for yourself, honestly.
So how can we reclaim our masculinity as a man, and why do we need to reclaim our masculinity?
Well, if you don't want to get, burned, you don't want to get, like, broken up with, you don't want to, experience sadness, you don't want to be a victim, right? Like, this is what masculinity is, right? Like, it's like, once you develop it, you won't have to experience a lot of the pains that, I'm not saying it'll be a pain-free life, but when you live in a masculine role, you definitely have more accountability, more responsibility, more ability to lead in general. So, it's important to reclaim your masculinity because you have to, quite simply. If you don't, it's gonna be very difficult to succeed in the dating world. Now, like I said, though, in the very beginning of this podcast, this is for people who want to be masculine. You can be a feminine man, and there's plenty of masculine women out there to engage with. And I really don't see any problem with that. Obviously, my background and experience comes from, I wanted to be masculine, but I was acting feminine. So I developed my masculine to become
Right.
the man I really wanted to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to know that, so you're not like, if you genuinely want love to be your priority, I'm going to say this won't be most men, right? This will be a very small percentage of men that actually want love to be their main priority. You can go do that, but if it's hurting you and it's not working, have the
Yeah.
courage to be like, change it up,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I have one question for you, last probably. So, what are your top three favorite books, like, which you could suggest to our audience also, and which, like, your personally favorite books in terms of dating and relationship, which help you with this journey?
Yeah, I have to recommend 3% Man, by Corey Wayne. That'd be the first one. That's like, really will get you off the ground. It'll give you an understanding of what you need to do to be more successful with women. Number two is The Way of the Superior Man, by
Yeah.
David Data. This will really help you, like, go from just kind of a dater to more of a complete masculine man. And then I think number three is a tough one, I could stick with this dating relationships topic, or I could go life on you. I would say, we're talking masculinity, let's say 10X by Grant Cardone. This book is all about, like, essentially realizing that you need to be going harder.
Yeah.
So basically, if you read those first two books and you're not convinced that you need to be going harder, or maybe you just don't think that a purpose is that necessary, or success isn't necessary, you'll read that book, and I think it'll change some perspectives for you.
Awesome. Great. So yeah, thank you so much, man. It was really amazing conversation. I think we talked a lot about masculinity, feminine energy, masculine energy, even feminism as well, and what should men do and how why it is important to reclaim masculinity. So it was great talking to you, man. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. If you guys want to check me out on Instagram, I'm at Kev underscore the coach. But if you're more of like a listener, like a podcast, I got Kev the Coach Experience streaming, everywhere too. And you can check out my Instagram, and I got all my links in there. You can check it out. And yeah, it was a blast being on here, man. These are important topics. You're
Yeah,
doing a great job putting this information out there because it's very important.
yeah, and guys, don't forget to check out his course on the superior man, right?
Yep, the Superior Man course.
Yeah,
Yep,
awesome.
inspired by the Way of the Superior Man book.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for
Cool.
having me.
Bye.